Power and influence are an important thing to talk about when it comes to leadership. There's a lot of arguing we could do about what exactly it might mean, or both of them might mean. The beginning of the class, we talked about how leadership is influence, that when you are a leader over someone, you naturally then have influence, positive or negative, over them. Now we're going to be relating that to power because it is part of leadership. So is leadership the same as power? It's an interesting question to ask. They're relatable and they go together for sure. That influence that you carry over people that we talked about in being part of leadership wouldn't be possible if you didn't have some sort of power over them. You wouldn't be influencing them at all if you didn't have any power over them. Everybody has power over other people, but when you are considering it in a leadership sense, people often think of power as coercion or as making other people do or think what you want them to think. Power we often think of as being a negative thing, as kind of a way of controlling other people and getting what you want done. It's about you as the leader and not about the people. When you think back to the beginning of this class, we talked about our personal definition of leadership. A personal definition of leadership, when I ask students to do this at the beginning of the semester, very often they include this kind of thing. These kind of things as part of their leadership. The idea that this person's in charge and takes control and is comfortable in front of people and is a powerful person. But that's not exactly what it really is when it comes to power and leadership. It doesn't necessarily imply that the person is powerful or in that way. We'll get into that in a minute. But also, power and leadership are not the same thing. They can't be the same thing. You can be a leader and carry your power really differently, or be a leader and not have any power. Or you can have power but not be a leader. And so they aren't mutually exclusive. They don't always go together. They don't always go apart either, though. Perhaps you could look at it that leadership is the what. It's the thing you're trying to do. But power is the how. It's how you do it. Is you wield in one way or another power over other people. And power isn't necessarily good or bad, but it might be necessary in order to have influence over people. It might not be necessary, though, in order to be a leader. It really just honestly depends on how you look at it. There kind of isn't a right answer here, because each one of us is going to think of leadership and power and their relationship with each other differently. And that's totally okay. We already kind of talked about how they're related, that they might be needed. They might need each other. Particularly leadership might need power in order to have influence over other people. But they're often confused for one another because, again, when we think of a leader, we think of somebody who's powerful and strong. We think of positive or negative leaders that have been powerful, like Hitler or Gandhi. Those people had incredible control over other people, get them to do what they wanted. But they did that through wielding some sort of power, but they were both leaders. Good or bad, they were both leaders. So in order to understand this a little better, let's break down power. Let's look at what power is. Power is the influence an individual or group wields over another. Now, we've been using those words. Power is influence then. If leadership is influence then as well, there's definitely a relationship between power and leadership. Like I said, maybe leadership needs power in one form or another. Or it could be the ability to overcome resistance and get things done. Now, this is what we think of when we're thinking of the person who's powerful. This is the kind of person who stands up for themselves and avoids resistance and gets things done. Now, those two things are two different definitions of one thing. And sometimes you'll see them, they'll come together, but other times they will be separate from one another. Someone will have influence, but that's not the kind of person who overcomes resistance. Sometimes your influence can be negative, and sometimes it can be positive. It really just depends. Power, I already mentioned the fact that people often think of power as being that strong person who's aggressive maybe, or at least strong. But that's not how it always is. Sometimes a powerful person is subtle. They don't say much. Sometimes they don't say anything at all. Sometimes the most quiet people you know will have the most power over you. Or the people who say the least will have the most power over you. It doesn't necessarily mean this person's strong. Some of the best influences in my life have been people who've just been very simple, small and simple people. People that who don't carry a lot of weight or have a lot of things to, weight to throw around in our society, for lack of a better word. They're small in that way in society, but they've had an incredible influence on me. And so they've, yes, wielded a sort of power over me. Sometimes those kinds of leaders do great things, especially when you're working with young kids. They will see you as a leader just for being older. They just respect you that way. And so whether or not you're a strong person who's comfortable being in front of a group, they will see you as a leader, and therefore you wield a power over them. And so it's your decision how you're going to handle that. Think of even your friends, your peers even wield a power over you. Their opinion on things might affect your opinion on things. It's not only that way with little children. But the important thing to think of when it comes to power is that we're often competitive when it comes to power. We think that someone else's promotion or increase of power, and whatever it might be, will decrease ours. But that's not the case. Power is infinite. It never runs out. You never lose it. You never run out of it. We never come to a threshold where there's no more power to give. I often relate this to having children. When I had my first son, I felt a love for him I'd never felt, and I'm sure you've heard that before, but it is absolutely true. And I was worried when I was pregnant with my second child that I was going to, that my love for my second child or my first child, either one or the other, was going to take away from my love for the other. That I wasn't going to be able to love my daughter the way I loved my son, or that my love for my daughter was going to take away from my love for my son. That's not at all what happened. My love for them grew, my ability to love. And that's kind of how it works with power. It doesn't run out. If someone, for example, say you're working with kids and there's this one kid that you've been buddy with and you've been able to be a counselor for them. If they start getting close to someone else, it doesn't necessarily mean that your power has been taken away. It just means that their ability to have someone have power over them has increased. That's kind of how power works. If someone in your job gets a promotion, it doesn't take away from your job or your power or your position. You can just be happy for them because their power increased and yours didn't change at all, or yours maybe increased as well. It's infinite. There is no running out of power. There's no taking away from your power as well. And when you're leading a group, the more balanced you make this power, and this, if you view this as power is infinite, it's easy for you to balance it out then, to delegate responsibilities. Because again, it doesn't take away from your power. It is only increasing the power of someone else. And the more balanced you make that, the more effective a group can be, because you're sharing responsibilities. And so therefore each person can function at a very efficient level. Power is manifested in different ways. Some are positive and some are negative. And you really honestly can argue that any of them might be positive or negative depending on the situation. But there's coercion. This is often seen as negative because you either withhold resources from people or you punish them. You make them do what's right because you're ruling them by fear. Then there's connection or networking. You have power because of who you know. It's not what you know, it's who you know. It's a very common phrase, and that's the reason why, because you have a power based on who you know. Empowerment. This is sharing power with others. This is the delegation that we're talking about. This is somebody who views power as infinite and therefore shares it. Expert power, because you're knowledgeable, you have some expertise, you have power over other people. Like for example, if you're leading a rock climbing group, you know how to rock climb, and so therefore you have power over others. Helplessness, pretending to have needs so that you can get other people to do things. This is often seen as negative as well. I know an older gentleman who does that. He feigns it being in need so people will do things for him. But sometimes I do this for my son. I fake that I don't know where the spoons go so that he'll help me put them away, to get him to take responsibility, and to show him and to learn, basically also. Learn where the spoons go. Indirect power, this is when you balance it out as much as possible. You use social norms or group, the group dynamics to get people to do things. Informational. If you know things, then you've got power. It's also what you know. Yes, it's true. Legitimate power, this is the actual position that you carry. Referent leadership or power, or charisma. We talked about this being a way people can become a leader is just by having that charisma. You're admired by others. People respect you. You have charm. Giving or taking away rewards, and then also social status is another form of power.